Good morning, everybody. It's Sunday morning. I'm just out of the bed, so a little bit bleary-eyed, but this is the next step. You take the sourdough out of the fridge and look how much it's risen overnight in the fridge. See all those lovely bubbles on the top there. Okay, so you leave that out overnight, or leave that now sitting here for 2 hours. Just uncovered like that. I think it is uncovered. Let me check. So here we go, guys. 2 hours later, and can you see how big this has got? Like it's literally about to pop out over the top of the bowl. So next thing you need to do is just lightly dust. You don't want to put too much flour on here. There's a fine balance, because if you've too much flour, then that's unfermented flour, and you know it will affect what all the stuff that you've done here so far. Okay, I'm also have another little bowl over here. I'm just going to keep my hands wet, so I'm going to just gently release the dough from the sides. Can you see that? From the sides of the bowl here. And I have to say, it's a little bit of a miracle here. Just going to wet my hands again. This is the best looking dough I've ever done, and it's just in time for making a film of it. That's nice, isn't it? That it's just for you guys, the perfect dough. Okay, so I've released it from the sides, and then I'm just going to gently tip it over. Can you see how it just, if you take it nice and slow, it just releases itself from the bowl. Just like that. There you go. Now, the next step is using one of these. If you haven't got one of these little scrapers, you can also use a knife, which I've done in the past because somebody's put this away and I didn't know where they put it. So I'm going to dip this in my little bit of flour here, and I'm going to split this in two, okay? Because we're going to get 2 loaves out of this, and you're just pulling it apart like that. That's pretty easy, isn't it? So we're just going to gently get this into shape. Now I am going to make 2 different kinds of loaves. One loaf is going to be in a pound tin, like a normal loaf of bread. So I'm going to leave that shape kind of nice and long like that, okay? And this one here is going to be round. Oops. So I'm going to try and get that to be nice and round, okay? Just might put a little bit more flour underneath here, just so I can get it moving. There you go. So I'm just gently tucking it in. Do you see how I'm making a nice round shape there? You can kind of pull it around to the sides like that. Try and keep them apart actually, because they will stretch another little bit here. Okay, so I am now going to just cover them with a clean tea towel and let them bench rest here for just a half an hour. That's not too long, and I'll be back. So I just wanted to add, at this stage when my loaves are bench resting, my big bowl that I use to make my sourdough is empty, and I start the process all over again. Does that make sense? So I get my sourdough that I fed earlier today, that's risen, and I start making my dough, so I'll have another batch for tomorrow. Hope that makes sense. Okay guys, a half an hour has passed. Oops, look, sticking to the, I probably should have dusted them slightly with a little bit of flour. There's a lesson to be learned. Okay. So next step now is we're going to have a stretch, okay? So this is the final shaping and stretch of the dough, and we're going to pop it into our loaf tins. So I'll just gather a tiny little bit more flour on here, and using flour this time, you basically pull it out as far as it will go, okay? And fold it back over 3/4 of the way, okay? Does that make sense? Same thing this side. pull it out as far as it will go and stretch it back over itself. And I'm not flattening it. You see how I'm keeping all the air locked in there as much as I can. Just get a little bit of flour on your hands. There's a lot of activity all around me here. It's Sunday morning, so there's people cooking sausages and getting the leg of lamb on in the oven, so if there's any background noise, please excuse. Okay, so see the way I folded that over, and now what I need to do is gently lift it off here with my scraper, and I'm going to try and fold over. I want the nice part on the top, okay, seamless part on the top. Now I'm using a banneton for this. If you don't have a banneton, don't worry, you can use loaf tins. If you are going to get into making sourdough, I definitely suggest you go ahead and invest in one of these guys. They're brilliant. Some people take the muslin off and cook, shape their dough without the muslin, but I have found that sometimes my dough sticks to the banneton without the muslin, so I'm just, for the sake of this video, I'm going to do it with the muslin on. If you don't use the muslin, see how liberally I'm flouring here. If you don't use the muslin, it gives it that lovely ringed look on your sourdough. Okay, so now that that's done, I'm going to lift up my sourdough, and I'm just going to tuck all the creased ends in underneath, and I'm just going to pop it in there nice and gently, okay? And I'm just going to just try and secure all the seams into each other like that. So that's basically it. At this point now it goes and it sits in the fridge covered for 2 hours. That'll be the final rise, and then I will pop it straight into the oven. So if you don't have a banneton, I'll show you how to do it with a just a loaf tin, okay? So you just get a small little bit of olive oil and sprinkle it in there and just rub it all the way around the edges like this, and then you just sprinkle it with a little bit of flour just to get the edge of the, just to absorb whatever olive oil is left over, and just shake it all the way around, okay? Just to try, what we're aiming here is no sticking. We don't want any of this dough to stick, okay? And we'll start then stretching out this other loaf, okay? Same thing. Pull as far as you can and fold over. Same thing here. Pull and stretch, fold over. My hands are a little bit sticky now. Next part here. Pull, stretch, fold over. And the last side with a lovely big air bubble in it. Pull and stretch and fold over. Okay? So, because this is going to go the opposite direction and it's going to be seam side down, it's important that you try and get all those seams tucked in nice and tight together. Otherwise the air will release out of the bottom. If that makes sense. You know the way you get a crack in your dough sometimes? That's the air steam being released. So that's nicely tucked in like that. And I'm just going to flip it over and tuck it in a nice shape like that. I usually have less in this than I do in the other one. Just tuck it in nicely because I prefer the round one to be nice and big. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to cover the two. You can cover this with a little bit of cling film, and just oil your cling film first and then pop it into the fridge, and I'll take it out in 2 hours. So guys, about an hour before the 2 hours is going to be up, heat your oven up as high as it'll go. Mine goes up to about 240. So put your oven up to as high as it'll go, and we're going to cook our bread in North Americans call this a Dutch oven. This is like a casserole dish with a lid on it. I'm going to cook it in here. So we're going to preheat this in the oven. So while the oven is preheating, I'm going to pop this in and get it to heat up. so that it's ready. If you have a cast iron dish like that, it's great because it retains the heat really well. Okay, if you don't have a full hour to get your oven heated up, or if you've forgotten, don't worry about it. Just heat it up as much as you can ahead of time. Okay. So guys, here we are. My oven is preheated. I have taken my, do you remember the one I put in my loaf tin? See the way I had lightly oiled the cling film so it didn't stick to the top? It has risen a little bit. So I'm just going to use, I have like it's a special blade for sourdough. But if you use any kind of, you get your hands on any blade and just score at an angle, score the top of it like that. Because you want the air, the steam to come out at the top. This actually is not cutting very well. It should cut a little bit better than that, but it's okay, it'll be fine. So I'm going to pull out of the oven now the pot that we're going to cook the other sourdough in. Okay, don't look at my dirty oven. And take the lid off. Okay, before I do that I should have brought you over here a little bit, Grace, helping me. And I'm going to take the lid off. That was not supposed to happen. These are all the things that should not happen, guys, today, but that's good because if it happens to you, you know it's okay. It is fixable. Okay, let me pop that back on there. Okay, now I want to invert this, so I'm using a piece of greaseproof paper, okay, which I just put on the top. And I always find it easier to invert things when I put a tea towel on as well. I just have more control, okay? So there you go. And this should just lift off nicely. Can you see that? It's sticking slightly. But if I take it nice and gently, it'll just peel off. Ta-da! How does that look? So what I'm going to do now is score the top of it. And I'm just going to try a nice angle like that, because that's where you want, I want the steam to come out there. Okay, so I'm going to pop it in here like this. Just lift it nice and gently. Pop it, try and center it. Pop the lid on and whack it into the oven at its highest temperature setting. And I'm going to set the timer for 30 minutes. Be very careful, because I'm going to pop this fella in at the same time. He won't take as long to cook as the other one will, because it's bigger, or it's in the pot. I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes, and at that stage the small loaf should be cooked, but the other one I will just lift the lid off and I'll brown it for a further 15 minutes. We're almost there, we're nearly done. Okay guys, 30 minutes are up. So I'm going to reset my clock for another 15 minutes because that's the amount of time I'm going to leave it with the lid off. Not too close to my dirty oven. So here's one loaf that looks nicely baked. And I'm just going to take the lid off this one. And you can see what's happening here. There's a nice ear. I think it's called an ear. Now, some people have a problem with the bottom of the sourdough burning. So at this stage, what we could do is get one of these plain sheets here and just slide the sourdough onto the plain sheet, and that should avoid the burning of the bottom of the crust, if that makes sense. So we're going to leave that back in for another 15 minutes, and then it's going to be lovely and toasty and caramelly on top. So guys, the moment of truth. Let's cut in here. And what we're looking for, I don't know if you can hear this. Oh, can you hear that? You want to pull the camera a little closer? Can you hear that? Yummy, yummy, yummy. Okay, so what we're looking for is a nicely aerated loaf of bread. And that means we want lots of little bubbles in here. Be some crack now if it doesn't look nice. Be of little faith. And sometimes the bottom can be a little bit hard to cut into. Well, it's not the airiest and bubbliest sourdough I've ever had, is it, Tony?
No.
No.
You've had better.
It's
still pretty good.
Still going to be absolutely delicious. Smells gorgeous. It will be totally eaten. So most of the time I have huge, big, round holes in here. That's just typical.
See?
Not to worry.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely and spongy and it's not dense at all. So there you go, guys. That's what you're looking for. A lovely sourdough. My favorite way to eat the sourdough is toasted. Grace and Tony love it straight out of the oven, but I like to wait until it gets crunchy. Loads of butter on it out of the toaster. Thanks for watching, everybody. God bless.